By the time you get through the end of this video, you're literally going to have a formula that you can use every time that you have a cheat meal or a refeed meal, or you're trying to implement carbs back into the diet after being on a low carb diet. But before I get into the science, I want to make sure that you do turn on notifications. Hit that little bell notification button that's here on YouTube so that you can know whenever I go live or know whenever I post a video. I do a lot of live broadcasts, a lot of coaching broadcasts where I answer your questions, and you won't be able to see those live unless you turn on notifications. And if you're new to my videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So let's get down to the science and what you need to do for your cheat meals. The first thing that you want to do is hyperhydrate before your cheat meal. And I know some people will say, well, this is crazy. You don't want to be having any kind of hydrotoxicity or anything like that. But hear me out on this. The biggest problem that happens when people have cheat meals is they end up bloating up like crazy. And it's simply because your insulin function, along with your kidney's ability to regulate water, is tied in very much so hand in hand. When you're on a ketogenic diet, a lot of times you lose a lot of water weight, or on a low carb diet in general you do. And that's simply because insulin is not being present. Insulin has an effect on the kidney's ability to regulate hydration. So when insulin's not there, you expel a lot more water. Well, now you're having a cheat meal or a refeed meal, and suddenly you're bringing in all kinds of carbohydrates, all kinds of insulin levels, and you're bringing in sodium. So your body is now having to hold on to all this water and all this sodium, because a lot of times cheat meals are salty. So by hyperhydrating first, you're dropping your body's sodium levels, which some people think is bad, but if you're doing it for a short amount of time and you're not going to chronically drink hyper amounts of water, you're just dropping your sodium levels, hyperhydrating, so that when you do have that cheat meal, the sodium balance is normal and you don't rebound quite so much. I've been doing this for years and it's very, very effective, making it so that you don't bloat up a whole lot. The other thing that we have to factor in is oxidative stress. Okay, the more hyperhydrated you are, the easier it is for your body to flush out all the oxidative stress that occurs from having a cheat meal in the first place. You're setting yourself up to be able to rebound a lot better. That's plain and simple. Okay, the next thing I want you to do is before you actually have your cheat meal, you need to have a pre-cheat meal. And what I mean by that is having a moderately high glycemic carbohydrate, something like a rice cake. Rice cakes are very high glycemic, along with a very lean amount of protein, something like 3 ounces of maybe a lean meat, or in better cases, something like a pea protein that's easy to assimilate and preferably plant-based because the body will break it down a lot better. So what you're doing here is you're spiking your body's insulin in a controlled way. A lot of times people go to town on their cheat meals and they just dive right in, and their bodies go from charging away in a really healthy state to 100% bad. And you need to have this transition. So what you're doing is you're spiking your insulin in a controlled way that you are in complete control of. You're in control of how many rice cakes you have, and you have that lean protein so that your body can just assimilate that, spike your insulin, get yourself used to carbohydrates again without flooding it with all the bad stuff too. Which leads me to my next point. This first meal that you lead with needs to have a very, very low, if not totally zilch amount of fat in it. Why? Because you haven't been having carbohydrates. So now when you do have carbohydrates, your insulin levels are going to skyrocket. Well, when your insulin levels skyrocket and you have fats in the equation, that fat is going to go into storage too. So we need to make sure we keep control of this. Okay, the next step is 45 to 60 minutes later, you're going to consume some more protein with a moderate amount of lower to moderate glycemic carbohydrates. What am I talking about here? I'm talking about 2 to 3 ounces max of like a sweet potato. Okay, just enough to bring you down from that high spike that you just had with the high glycemic carbs. What I don't want to have happen to you is have you spike your insulin way high and then have your blood sugar crash and then have you get super hungry and eat a bunch of stuff in your cheat meal. I want to bring you down from that glycemic spike, and I want to make you go into your cheat meal or your refeed meal in a little bit more of a controlled way. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to have your rice cake, like I said, and then 45 to 60 minutes later, have a little bit of sweet potato so your blood sugar goes up and then comes down and then balances out. This is going to make it so that when you do have the meal that you've been looking forward to, you're not going to want to just dive in and have a ton of it. You're going to be in a lot more control. The next thing that I want you to do is get a little bit of bone broth in you. And I know I talk about bone broth a lot, but we want to make sure that we're getting bone broth in simply because we're trying to reduce the inflammation in the body a little bit. The amino acids that are in bone broth to begin with are already very anti-inflammatory. We're talking about cysteine, we're talking about histidine, we're talking about glycine, and we're talking about glutamine. All of them are anti-inflammatory, but glutamine's the one that has a powerful anti-inflammatory effect on the gut. And when it comes down to eating, of course, we want to make sure that that's in control. The way that it does this is it decreases something known as epithelial cell apoptosis. Apoptosis is just a natural cell death. Apoptosis is going to occur, but what we don't want to have happen is apoptosis when we don't want it. And in the epithelial layer of the intestinal tract, that's where we really want to make sure everything is functioning and thriving. And as soon as we eat a cheat meal, we could have a die-off of all the healthy cells there. So if we encourage the immune system to be healthy and really promoting a good lifestyle of our actual digestive system, it makes it so that we can consume that food and rebound a lot better. Those of you that know me know that I work a lot with Kettle and Fire. So as always, you can find your deal at Kettle and Fire by simply going to kettleandfire.com/Thomas. You can find it in the description below. That's always my go-to for bone broth, just because I've known them for years and I know what kind of work they put into their product. Okay, the next thing that I want you to focus on is getting lemons and apple cider vinegar along with your meal. Why do I want you to do this? Well, when it comes down to the lemons, it's something known as pectin. You see, pectin is a certain type of soluble fiber that slows down the digestion of fats so that they actually just get eliminated quicker. Now, how does that make sense? How does slowing down digestion allow them to get eliminated quicker? And why do we want to eliminate the fats? Don't we usually like them? Well, by slowing down the digestion, you're making it so that the droplets stay a little bit bigger. And when that happens, the body just goes ahead and pushes them on through the waste system and gets them out of your body. So why do we want the fats to be a little bit lower or not digested with this cheat meal? Well, it comes back down to that insulin thing again. When we spike the insulin, we don't want fats along for the ride. So we want to slow down the digestion of fats so that they don't go into the cell and get absorbed as well. There's actually a study that I want to reference that has to do with pectin and lemons too. A study that was published in 2014 in the Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry found that subjects that were given a little bit of pectin after a meal had a significant increase in the delayed digestion of the fats. So basically what we're finding here is that pectin does in fact slow down the breakdown of fats, and it does this by decreasing the extent of lipid degradation or breakdown. You see, when we look at how the science of fat digestion works, it's pretty interesting. When we consume fats, they have to become emulsified. They never fully digest. So pectin slows down that emulsification, therefore making it so that they're not really absorbing through the micelles and into the bloodstream. Now I will say this, normally we want fats to absorb, but cheat meals are a little bit different. Okay, then the apple cider vinegar. Why that? Simply put, it has acetic acid in it. I sound like a broken record because I'm always talking about acetic acid, but really acetic acid is kind of a miracle compound. What the acetic acid does in this case is it deactivates certain enzymes that normally break down carbohydrates in the body. So when you deactivate those enzymes, the carbohydrates aren't getting broken down as much. Again, why is that a good thing? It sounds kind of like a bad thing. Well, in this case, it's making it so any of the high glycemic carbs that you consume, like the sugars or anything like that, are going to end up having a lower glycemic index because they're not breaking down all the way. So the same way that we're slowing down the digestion of the fats, we're actually slowing down the digestion of the carbs too, so they don't have this massive, massive impact. So there you have it. You have the understanding of how insulin works, you have the understanding of how cheat meals work and why you should really call them a refeed and not a cheat meal, but you also understand the sequence and the series of events that you need to follow to make sure that you have the most effective refeed that could be possible. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel, and if you like these videos, make sure you let me know and comment and let me know what kind of videos you want to see in the future. I will see you in the next video.